Look at these pioneers.
I know, these pioneers, the Hollywood people. You've been going to a lot of Hollywood events.
Last Saturday night was the first time in a long time, like 15 months, that
Right.
out with people. And I have a little bit of my voice too, but it's from talking louder than I have for a while, for a long time.
Yeah, what did you go to?
The opening of the Academy Museum. So
Right.
I'm the chair of the board of trustees.
Did you go to the Emmys?
No, the Emmys was only for nominees.
Right.
So I got to watch that good Emmy night for us in my sweats with the dogs.
Oh, okay,
It's fun,
all right,
yeah.
okay, great.
So I missed some of those things, but not all of them.
So let's start about the pandemic.
Yeah.
It has fueled enormous growth in Netflix, which has recently stalled. So let's first talk about what the pandemic did. You passed 200 million, is that correct,
Yeah.
the number?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the impact on your business, because all the tech businesses have doubled, tripled in size. It
Yeah.
had an enormous good effect on it, if you can use that word.
Well, one of the things that we'll parse out over the next couple of years will be how much of that was accelerated growth that was coming anyway. So just accelerated pull forward, and how much, because if you think about the trends in the history of television, they're typically 20-year cycles. So if you look at those things, and if you look at this over the next 20 years, you probably won't even be able to identify COVID in that mix.
Okay.
So the idea of people were home and they were experimenting, had time on their hands at the beginning, and they were trying to try new things and watch them. We think they were coming, and it probably accelerated a lot of growth for us in terms of pulling forward what was going to come down the road.
What was going to come, that this
I
was
believe so.
already a
Yeah,
trend.
yeah.
At the same time,
You see it in the growth of streaming,
right.
just generally.
At the same time, streaming has grown. Finally, one of the things, I think it was Peter Kafka who noted this, is that you have laughed these companies over and over and over again. Well, they're here now.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. They're here, whether it's Disney, NBC, everybody, Apple, and many others. Talk about that first, and then I'd like to talk about the challenges.
Yeah. Well, look, we've been competing with those very folks since the beginning, since we started streaming. They were sometimes in different distribution channels, but with the same kind of content. Folks who made great TV shows, we had to make great TV shows. People
Sure.
made great movies, we had to make great movies. And I think competing with them in this arena, we're probably more confident because this is kind of home field. So we know the technology, when you push play, it works. When you come to Netflix, you find great things to watch. It isn't just that we have a lot, it's just that finding it matters. And being able to actually pop entertainment brands into the zeitgeist, something that some of them have been working on for 100 years, and we've been at it for far less.
Right.
But I think it's one of those things where we are competing on those grounds really well. And we think that they're going to continue to make great content, and so are we. And it's going to be up to the consumers to decide what they.
All right, that's the CEO answer.
Yeah, well,
Company CEO answer, which excellent, good job.
Thank you.
But talk a little bit about, they are really now spending enormous amounts of money.
Yeah.
They're branding like crazy. They're trying to sell subscriptions. Do you feel at some point it really affects you? Wall Street certainly does. Your growth is stalled. Wall Street talks about it almost incessantly.
Look, I think it's great for everyone to talk about competition. It's great for everyone to think about competition. We really don't. We really are competing with ourselves. The things that I'm most concerned with for the next decade is internal execution. Can we continue to operate as well with 10,000 employees that we did with 2,000 employees, and then with 20,000 employees, and operating around the world? Right now, remember, we started off as a domestic company mailing DVDs around, and we have made these pivots into the bigger, broader, and different skill sets. And to me, it's like I keep looking at it saying it's a kind of a marvel of execution, and can we maintain it at enormous scale? To me, that's more troubling than any competition that's on the marketplace.
Do you worry about from any of them? Or is there something that makes you nervous about their entrance?
Just that we won't, I have to take them seriously, and I don't ever want to underestimate any of them, because I think they all underestimated us.
Right.
And I just want to make sure we don't make that same mistake. I used to think about, I'm sure that they would sit in their rooms and say, we're not worried about them, they're tech people, they won't
called you
figure out.
Latvians.
Yeah, Albanians.
Albanians.
Yeah, but they won't figure out creative. They're a tech company, they got the tech, but we got the creative. And I always want to make sure that we're not just sitting around dismissing that they'll get the tech right someday.
Right, dismissing that they will or won't.
Yeah,
They
right.
certainly have gotten the tech okay. They work. My HBO Max works just fine.
Well, not last night.
Okay, right, fair point. All right, so.
No, but in general, you're right. We look at it this way, that they're going to figure it out. I made this comment in the press a long time ago about HBO that had legs that just kept sticking around, which was that we wanted to become HBO before they became us.
Right.
And that's basically what, that was 2013.
Right.
And that's the way I think about it now, as well, which is you have to do all these things really well.
Let's talk about the evolution of streaming, because you were the one that got Netflix into this. I think Reed gives you the credit.
Yeah, the original programming for sure. Yeah,
So,
I can tell you, I met Reed in '99, and Reed talked about Netflix almost exactly like it is right now, and that was a crazy vision in 1999. But it talking about no DVDs by mail, and you talk about downloading instead of streaming back then.
Right.
But it was essentially the same product we have right now. And when you think about that piece of it, so Reed always said that this digital leap was going to take place and it was going to come. He probably thought it was going to come 10 years sooner than it
right,
did even.
okay.
But in general, I look at that and think about, the next one was to original programming, which was if you believed all those things were coming, then you better distinguish yourself against everybody else. And typically you're going to have to do that on programming.
All right, we're going to talk about programming in a minute, but talk about the streaming business now.
Yeah.
How does it break down and evolve? So here you have all these competitors.
Yeah.
They're all selling subscriptions. They're moving their content. They're creating original content.
Yeah.
How do you look at that from a strategic point of view to compete with that?
Well, first of all, I believe our advantage is that we're not conflicted in our business. So we make our programming for our members on Netflix. So there's when you're kind of managing through legacy businesses, you're trying not to kill them too fast. You see how the studios today are conflicted about when to put movies out. Do they put them direct to their service? Do they put them on the theaters first? Do they wait 45 days? Do they wait 14 days? So we typically are not, we're having none of those discussions. And I don't believe viewers and fans really care about those things.
Right.
They really care about, are you making great things that I want to watch? And so I think we don't have to get tied up in all that. And I do think for us, that becomes an advantage because we can focus, and we focus on members.
When you look at those arguments that they're having, I had Jason Kylar, I think I got into a little bit of a trouble on my podcast. And he was talking about when he had just announced putting everything out online to strengthen HBO Max, et cetera, like that. The kind of attacks he got was astonishing, even though privately most Hollywood studios acknowledge this is the future.
Yeah.
Tell me what you thought when they did that.
Look, I think it's hard not to just acknowledge that this is what consumers want. You can't look at the business. I don't think you could look at the world and say, how do we protect our business? You have to look at the world and say, what do people want and how can we serve that best? And I think what's clear is that in a very short amount of time, in the US, where we're most penetrated, 25% of the time you're watching television, you're watching streaming. You're watching streaming content across some service. Right. And 25% of that time you're watching Netflix. So this is an enormous shift in consumer behavior from broadcast to cable that I thought was amazing, and from cable to live to on demand was amazing. And this is much more impactful what's happening, and it's happening across all platforms. Mm-hmm. So you can't look at this and say, how do I want to bring this out? And you can see how difficult it is now for a broadcaster to find audience on their network. Right. And how hard it is for someone to break into the culture anymore if you're not in that streaming zeitgeist, where people can go to a party and hear you say, oh my God, I'm watching this new show, and then go home and push play and watch it. And it just feels so.
What do you think about the pushback he got? This is something you've been doing for years.
Again, so when we started making movies, we didn't have to contemplate this hybrid world that the studios would have to.
Right.
So what if we put it in a theater? What if we don't put it in a theater? What if we put it on DVD? So for us, it's like we've always, in all of our original movie deals, we've always contemplated what the world would look like in success. And I think it's really important that talent has to be respected and has to be compensated competitively. Mm-hmm. And for us, it was like, well, what would this deal look like if you went somewhere else? And how do I make sure you're compensated in a way you would have if you went somewhere else? So we've always taken that approach to it anyway.
And when they had to be forced to pay them more, obviously Disney's in a fight with Scarlett Johansson. Were you surprised by the reaction to Scarlett Johansson?
Look, I watch these things as a spectator sometimes too, and you watch it thinking, oh, I would have said this, or I wish we would have said that. And I do it myself all the time, so I understand sometimes intent isn't always how it lands. So I suspect that's probably.
It's kind of mean. I think it was intentful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that we have not been in those shoes, but it was. Yeah.
But what does it signal about the economics? Because they're all shifting to your economics in these new ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're doing is not very exotic anymore.
Right.
It was super exotic a couple of years ago, but now it's not very exotic at all.
Right.
In fact, same thing about Windows. I think about the day and date was this exotic idea that everyone had to fight tooth and
Just
nail.
saying exotic because you want us to watch.
I do.
One of the things, okay.
I want it to be misquoted as erotic, so people
Yeah,
tune in.
okay, all right. So, he's still in jail, right? He is. Are you doing a follow?
Not sure.
Okay, good. I lost my train of thought.
Tiger King 2 is coming.
When you said the word erotic, I was like, oh shit. When this is happening, when it's happening with them, with the economics, what does that do for your business? If they're all moving to your economics, do you have to shift again?
No, I mean, it's no use in being a disruptor just to disrupt things. Really, we thought this was a better way to, I mean, we've looked at it, this is just a better way to do it for us. And eventually people either adopt it or they just don't. But for us, I think we've always viewed it as a better way of doing business in terms of having, I think that producers making films who had a steady return on their investments and is a lot better than this kind of lottery ticket environment that the movie business operates in generally.
Which is back end.
Yeah, back end, and you'll make a big movie. Every once in a while, one will, like we talked about, how many years do we talk about My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Because it's that rare. It just doesn't happen that often.
Right.
So when it does, I'm sure people want to replicate it, and it's like the excitement of that is exciting for people, but people need to sustain themselves and make money and make more movies. And the way that we can, if you have a steady return on your investment in your movies, you can make more movies. And that's what we all really want. That's really what we want from them.
Right, I want to talk a little about content in a minute, but let's talk about verticalization. Do you need to verticalize? You've gone into games,
Yeah.
not in news.
No?
Do you need to do that? Buy a device?
No, I don't think so. Look, I think those devices are pretty useless without something that the consumer really desires to watch. So we just have to, as long as we're focused on Netflix being as desirable or more desirable in the future, then we don't have to, those devices are much more powerful and we're in good business relationships with all those folks.
So you do not need a device?
No.
You don't think it's important, like a Roku or?
I don't know that it's not important. It's just that I don't think it's vital for us. I think it's important for us to be desirable to consumers.
Today on Pivot, Scott Galloway was noting something like Ted Lasso won a ton of awards, getting a lot of attention. He thought it was it's just an okay show. It certainly doesn't match up with some of your shows, but Apple was able to push, I know there's Ted Lasso fans here, but Apple was able to push it through because they can broadcast to 1 billion people on all these devices they have. Do they have an innate advantage against you now?
I don't know, and I think
they got more Emmys, correct?
They got, not than us. No, but they got more. Ted Lasso got most for our comedy.
Right.
We won both for drama and for limited series.
Right.
And we had the most Emmys of anyone since 1974 with CBS.
It was the two of you, right?
Yeah. But for us, it was. I look at that like it's a nice marketing platform for sure. But in general, there's more effective ones than that. And I look at these two and say that there's Ted Lasso fans and Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso too. But I would say that the show itself is probably, and we don't know because they don't give numbers, how big or small the show is. But it did well at the awards, and you can make small awardsy shows that win a lot of awards. I'm not saying Ted Lasso is because I don't know the number.
Awardsy.
But awardsy. But it's awardsy. And I would say that what I was most proud of our 44 Emmys that night was that they were among our most watched shows on Netflix. Our most popular shows were also awardsy.
All right.
After that, I'd rather, and if I had to pick between the two.
You don't think that they have an innate advantage, the Amazons, the Apples, when they're in this space?
No, they may. I mean, like I said, it's a marketing platform. So it's a simple marketing platform, but if they're going to use it as one, then they probably should sell it to other people if it's that powerful.
Right, okay. So speaking of that, so one of the things, there was a story about people don't remember what they watch on Netflix.
Yeah.
We have some slides, correct? Let me put them up. Can we get them up?
Oh, look at this. This is like us being super transparent with you. Don't tell anybody.
Okay, all right. So this is the first thing, correct?
So here's the thing. So there's all this talk about do shows get, how do people talk about ratings? So in ratings, it's pretty cut and dried. The Nielsen's have been around for a long time. It was designed to sell advertising. It worked well for advertisers. For streaming, this kind of will point to some of the complexity in the reporting. So we're not trying not to be transparent. We're trying to be representative. So in this case, we talk a lot about the folks who choose to watch. So in the first 28 days of a release of something, this is the millions of counts that started. So Bridgerton,
individual accounts.
Individual accounts.
This is available, correct? This particular?
No, this list has never been seen in this form, for sure.
Okay, all right.
So Bridgerton at 82 million individual accounts. It could be more people, but 82 million accounts chose to watch Bridgerton the first 28 days of its release. And that's it all the way down to the bottom. And then that's film. The other side is film. So Extraction is the most watched in the first 28 days of
This is one of the Hemsworth.
Yeah, right. And this is the traditional measure that a lot of folks use around reach. So it's certainly a good measure of popularity.
Right.
But it's not necessarily a complete picture of his engagement. So this is people who choose to watch, and they watch a couple of minutes in the first
Couple of
28
minutes.
days. Yeah.
This is 2 minutes.
This is 2
opposed
minutes.
to 7.
Right.
And that means they're interested in it.
It means they didn't watch it, but they didn't start it by accident. They
Right.
chose it. And people say, so why do you do that instead of this? Now, the next one, I think, actually is
do
the
the
other
next
one,
one.
which is engagement, minutes of watching. You see the list is incredibly similar, so it's
Right.
certainly super representative. And where it gets disconnected is runtime. So on the previous list, we saw some things that were on the higher on the chose to watch and lower on this is because they're 30-minute episodes or half a season and those kind of things.
Right.
So this is not runtime adjusted. This is just by
So these
engagement.
numbers do not get released until now, right?
Correct.
And
So we're getting there. Right now, we're getting there in terms of we're trying to be more transparent with the market and with the time, with talent, with everybody as to, because everyone wants to know, are you watching my show? Is my show being watched? And it's a big black box for mostly. So we do publish a lot of numbers, but this is the most comprehensive look at this.
So what does this mean? Bridgerton season 1, obviously the most watched hours.
Yeah, so this is the people who push play. They watched it. They loved it. And they're
I love Bridgerton.
Oh, it's a great show. Yeah,
I do.
I think,
No idea why it's the straightest show ever. So
but you're still in.
I'm in for season 2. I just saw your thing. Go ahead.
But why this is an important view, I think, that when you think about what is success in this world, I think success is in a couple of measurements, and you can pick the order, but subscribers, of course, matter. Revenue matters, profits matter, and engagement. And for a subscription business, I think engagement really matters. And this talks about
So this
points to
keeps them there so
people
you
are
don't get
engaged.
rid of your subscription.
Yeah, they value this. I think this is a real indicator of value. Our members spend a couple of hours a day watching Netflix. Nielsen's been tracking in this kind of measurement for a couple months now, and in the last 4 weeks, the Netflix shows and films have been 10 of 10 in all but 1 week.
So the idea that people don't know what they're watching, how do you push back on that?
Well, we have some metrics, like if you look at on our site where most people can look to, the top 10 can give you a really good example. Oh, they are watching. Of course they're watching it right there.
Yeah.
And then some of these kind of oddities of television where they show that have been on for 3 years, like Manifest.
Yeah.
That people.
This is an NBC show that is now the most popular show. It was on.
Yeah, I mean, we only had it in the U.S. and Canada, and in the first 28 days, we had 25 million folks start. So it was like that's a good.
You
It's a good
revived
start.
the show.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So it got canceled by NBC. We went back and said there's clearly an audience interest based on what we see just in the U.S. and that we can pick up, bring the show back. And we're doing kind of a supersized season to tell. The story was always had a beginning, middle, and end at pitch. So we'll get to the beginning and middle is on Netflix now, and then we're going to produce the end.
You're making that. Correct. You did the same thing with Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai was a big, YouTube.
I'm a huge fan. I interviewed Ron Macchio.
It's a good. He is a blast.
Yeah.
And the show is great, and it just didn't really find the big audience on YouTube Red, and on Netflix it came out of the gate as a huge hit. The 3rd season was a monster, and we have another one coming up before the end of this year.
So when you're thinking about making this content, how do you those numbers are showing that it's mostly all your original content that's doing the best. How do you, when you look at those numbers, what are you thinking of how you should make things when you're talking to creators?
It's
obviously Bridgerton, you signed a very splashy deal
Yeah.
with Shonda Rhimes.
Yeah.
You signed another with Ryan Murphy. I didn't see a lot of his stuff up there. How do you look at these big deals?
So the one thing about data, I think it's a really good thing for letting other people judge how we're doing. But I think in terms of creation, you want to be careful not to use it too much. So like the notion of reverse engineering storytelling is a disaster. None of those things on paper were going to be great projects. Look at Queen's Gambit.
Right.
I mean, no one was making Queen's Gambit. Scott Frank tried to make that as a feature film for more than 10 years.
Right, you told me that.
And he recast it and recast it as a 7-part series, and it was a monster for us. And I think in looking at this, Bridgerton is not on paper what would be a big commercial show.
Right.
And again, it's all about execution and picking the right people and the right storytellers. And those big deals So Shonda made Bridgerton for us, and people look at these, how do you feel about these overall deals? Are they good, are they bad? And it's way too early to tell. Sometimes you have to look back at these things over many, many years. In the 5-year period or so where they're making content for you, what worked and what didn't. Now, Shonda's deal will be successful just on Bridgerton. And if you look at that and say, well, she's got a lot more to come, and we're thrilled about that. The same thing with Ryan. Ryan's going to make a lot of, he's very prolific, so he's going to make a lot of things, and things will work and things won't.
Is that what you want to be? Because when I first heard, I'm like, oh God, Ted's gone Hollywood.
Doing it overall?
Yeah.
No, the beauty of it is if we didn't do those, so those deals made a lot of press and got a lot of attention because I think they were kind of one of those man bite dog stories, like Netflix got an overall deal? What's that? Or I thought they were doing everything different. Right. And the main thing was we were also faced with reality, which was in this world where ABC and Disney compete with Netflix, they no longer sell us their content. So if we didn't do that deal with Shonda, Bridgerton would be somewhere else or it wouldn't exist anywhere. Right. And you can see how impactful it's been. So for me, it's like one of those ways. It's ensuring access to the people who you believe are telling the story that the world's.
What is your pitch to talent now then?
Well, the good thing is that most talent wants to be on the place that they're watching and that their friends are watching and their kids are watching, and that's typically Netflix. So that's the easy in, which is, we want to be in the zeitgeist, we want to be in the culture, we want my things to be watched. Of course, everyone wants to be paid, and we pay very competitively. But the one thing that's really difficult to do anymore, as you see, is finding that audience at the scale that we are able to. So, like I said, Bridgerton shouldn't have been a hard sale if you look at those numbers, but it was a really hard sale to get it done.
I mean,
yeah.
Besides you, one of the things when you're thinking about content,
by the way, I should tell you the other reason. It's not just like an accident because we're in a lot of places. The UI, the site, the way it picks things to show you. Yeah. It's super. I mean, the only thing worse than a list of a million titles is a list of 10 million titles. Right. So you really have to figure out some way to organize it in a way that people will find things that they love. And one thing we know is that if you pick the things from those rows, you are much more likely to love what you're watching and watch more of it than if you just pick something off the top 10 or you search for something that your friend recommended. In a weird way, Netflix recommends better than your friends. Right. And it really is a value in terms of when it comes to finding an audience.
Although sometimes I'm like, there's too much fucking stuff. Like, is there too much stuff in terms of content?
It's just not all for you. So
right. Well, I am a narcissist.
Yeah, so there's that. But like I look at those things like at my house, like it's my wife and I never agree on anything to watch. She loves Virgin River. She loves Sweet Magnolias. She loves Ginny and Georgia. She loves Firefly Lane, and I don't hate it. So I watch them with her. And I love it. And I love the experience of watching something with her that we both enjoy. But when it comes to my picks, they're completely opposite, and she goes to bed.
What is your top pick right now?
So we have
You don't want to say.
No,
go ahead.
I know it's so hard. It's hard because you want to pick you don't want to pick your children.
But I want you to pick your children.
You only put one on stage.
I know that's true. Trying to protect the others from COVID. What's your excuse?
No, for me, it's like because I'm always out of whack with the rest of the world because I'm watching the things as they're being made.
What do you like right now?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
I do like Ted Lasso, by the way. I really like. There's a show on HBO Max called The Other Two. I think is really funny.
Never heard.
See.
All right. So when you think I have a couple more questions.
I should tell you though, I think like the shows like The Crown and
The Crown.
Gambit. I mean, the thing about those shows is they manage to be highbrow and mainstream, and they are difficult material, and yet can be consumed by a big audience.
If you had to pick a show on Netflix right now that you thank your lucky stars for, probably House of Cards, but would it be The Crown now?
No. You know what? Y'all want to hear some recency bias?
What?
There's a show on Netflix right now that is the #1 in the world, like everywhere in the world. It's called Squid Game. Squid Game will definitely be our biggest non-English language show in the world for sure. It's only been out for 9 days, and it's a very good chance it's going to be our biggest show ever.
Explain what they do.
It's enormously popular. Squid Game is a show from Korea. It's a kind of dystopian survival story, kind of like Hunger Games or Maze Runner, but darker. And people love it.
Because like all the children died in Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, darker than that. Yeah. But it is enormously popular. And what's been wild is the growth of we produce local language content all over the world. We want those shows to be hugely impactful in the countries we make them. And every once in a while, one of them just breaks out, like La Casa de Papel, that was so enormously impactful
Money
around the
Heist.
world for us. Money Heist here. And Squid Game is
Lupin.
going to be that. Lupin was, I'm going to say, you
Lupin,
have to say
sorry.
with that, Lupin.
Okay.
But it was, at the time, it was our largest non-English launch, and the first non-English show to hit #1 in the US, and Squid Games is blowing past all of them.
Right, I like Call My
So
Agent,
watch Squid Game if you want
as
to.
you know. So I want a couple of things. The gamification of Netflix. What are you doing in games? And again, where are you going next in content?
So I would say, in Poland right now, people are playing games on Netflix. So we did launch a couple of games, and people are trying it out.
Well, good for the Poles.
Good for the Poles.
Okay.
And we're thrilled with how it technically is coming together. And I look at it like any other vertical of content. A couple of years ago, we weren't making unscripted. A couple of years ago, we weren't making movies. And a couple of years before that, we weren't making foreign language content. And I look at it now like games are this evolution of world building and storytelling, two things that we do all day. And there is a kind of future looking of saying, I don't know for sure what people will do as they grow up if they played a lot of games as a kid, but I'm sure people will spend more time gaming as adults than they did 10 years ago and 20 years ago. And part of that is going to be, is Netflix the way of monetizing content better for the consumer in the game world like it was in TV and movies?
So this will be original games and also other games.
Correct. And it'll be, we're still experimenting on what it's going to be and how it's going to play out. It's going to be primarily focused on mobile, and that it'll for sure be part of our subscription.
And then when does it get to the US?
Still stay tuned. So we're still working on the
What does stay tuned mean?
We don't have a hard deadline on it. We're not trying to make the fall season or trying to get out before CES or anything. So we're just really trying to make sure that when it's ready for
What
prime
other
time.
verticals do you think are critical? News?
We've been intentionally out of news. So we do
Yes.
documentary. We try to stay out of news because we're a global company, and that it be delivering the news from one place to another is highly scrutinized. And we're really primarily an entertainment company. We want to entertain people. And I don't know, the news can be not that entertaining sometimes.
Music?
Music's pretty well covered, we think, out there.
Okay.
Not a natural crossover, really.
All right.
Yeah.
A couple more questions. What's it like being co-CEO? I don't even know what that means.
So Reed, like I told you, I met Reed a long time ago, and I joined Netflix in 2000. So we've been working together for a really long time. And in the last 10 years or so, since we started streaming, and certainly since Originals, we've been running the company together. So it's probably gonna, you know Reed well, and this is a guy of unbelievable intellect and no ego. And he has been able to, like you said, he always gives me credit for original programming. I hope I'm as good a leader down the road to do that for somebody, because he could have taken the credit easily for things like that.
Right. So why didn't
and he created the environment for me to do that,
Right.
which is super important. So a lot of the day-to-day decision making and the running of the business we've been doing together for a long time.
Together.
So not fundamentally different.
What do you disagree on?
I think
Who wins?
well, we have rubbed off on each other a lot over the last couple of years in terms of, I think he's made me a better tech executive. I've made him a better entertainment executive. He is he trusts my intuition, and I trust his take on the data. And his intuition is more informed by the data, and every once in a while he gets that, but he takes himself out of his comfort zone every day in that way. The same thing with me, which is I look at this and say, I know what that says, but I think this is going to work. And that has served us really well. But I also am I'm also rational about it. And the data, there's a lot of good that can come from both. And I think it's that mix of art and science. And I think that, when Reed and I think about it, we're kind of 60-40 on either side of that, of the art and science of running the business.
Does that ever end? Do you wish he would get on a penis-shaped rocket ship and go somewhere else?
I don't want to go there. I know I can't speak for Reed, but that's not my plan.
No. Well, he doesn't have to get on a penis-shaped rocket ship.
No.
To do something else.
Yeah.
Do you see this continuing?
You know what the thing about it is, I can kind of understand it. It's like I've been doing this for over 20 years at Netflix. I've never had 2 years that feel the same. So
Right.
It really feels new all the time, and the challenges are big.
Well,
Right now is the most exciting time of the
The reason
business.
I'm asking is because you're famous for firing people and moving them along.
Yeah.
Do you think about that with someone like him or not? Is he?
No, not at all. I'm fortunate. For me, it's like I look at these things around. What makes us pretty unique in this role is I genuinely want him in that seat.
Okay.
Yeah, and
But how are you going to change it? What is your CEO-ship different?
Look at I think we've got to focus on mostly about making programming that people can't live without. And as long as we're making movies and television that is better than the world has ever seen, that's the direction I got to take everybody. And make sure that we're making sure that Netflix is a creative culture. And there's no question it was born, as a tech company, and there's a ton of creativity in tech. The question is being a creator company like this versus what we were before, which is a lot more of a distributor company, using tech to improve the distribution. And now it's how do we use tech to improve storytelling, and how do we do it to improve
We're going to take
production.
questions in a minute, but I just have a few more.
Yeah,
What is there something, a vision that you have that you think is going to go forward? For example, movie theaters, for example. When you think about that, people have shifted dramatically to the home, largely because of the pandemic, but the home experience is better, for example. Are movie theaters dead?
No, I think they will be less frequent, maybe more expensive, a good more event to get out of the house and do something, which people are still going to be looking for that. And I do think that movies premiering on television at home on that big screen on your comfortable couch is pretty sweet. It's pretty hard to compete with, really. But if you want to go out, if you just want to go out, I can't compete with that either.
Yeah, I think of movies whether they're COVID-worthy now. That's my
COVID-worthy?
Remember on Seinfeld?
Yes, sponge-worthy.
Yeah, you got it too. I do. So far, it's only been the recent Marvel movie and James Bond. That's it.
Yeah, and I think when you think about a big, loud, spectacular thing, you want to feel like I want to see that on the big screen. Now, far more people will watch both of those movies at home, but I do know that that is something that will get you out of the house and go do something. And there's nothing wrong with that. People choose all kinds
What
of
do you
things.
make of
They eat
the
at home, they cook
arguments
dinner.
of many creators that no, we must have this theatrical experience?
It just depends on who they're talking for. If they're talking for themselves, that's a short debate. If they're talking about for the consumers, that will play out in attendance.
All right.
So, and I do think the kind of movies that are getting made, it's not like big movies are for the theaters and small movies are for home. I do think that the kinds of things, there's less and less room for character-driven drama at the theater. Like you said, that may not be COVID-worthy for you.
Right.
And I do think the idea that we can get those movies made and get them seen by big audiences is a saving to the industry.
I'm going to end by asking you about, would Netflix ever buy a movie theater chain?
No, I don't see that. And we have 2 theaters now. It's not really a chain, but we screen movies there, and we have our premieres there, and we do repertory. If you live in New York, the programming at the Paris Theater is amazing. So they'll screen our original movies, and then the director will pick movies that inspired them, and we curate them over the week that they're showing, and it's a really
You don't
great
feel the
thing
need
for the
to
fan.
own a device or a movie theater?
No. We have got to make content that people can't live without, and everything else takes care of itself.
And when you think about things you need to buy, what do you need to buy?
We are right now. We're thinking about different ways that we are how to scale production, the kind of the production infrastructure and those kind of things.
So not buying Spotify, for example.
No. We have always been builders instead of buyers, and so I do think our goal really mostly is to build, so we can build it more. It's much more bespoke, our business.
Right.
So, and the things that serve us well, like you look at somebody like, well, why don't you sell your data? And I look at it as well. It really doesn't inform much except for watching on Netflix. So, I think for us, it's like we're so narrowly focused. I think it's what served us so well.
What about being bought? Being bought.
Yeah, no, it's not on the
See
plans.
that? I know it's not your plan, but I was just with a major studio. They think they're going to get bought by a tech company in the next 5 years.
I'm glad we don't think about that. You know what I mean? I don't need people thinking about that. I don't think about it. I know Reed doesn't think about it. And then the board's not thinking about it. So it's a good thing not. I imagine that would be a big business distraction to think about it too much.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, they feel like these big tech companies are going to suck up everything
Yeah.
over. So if you had to look out, I'm going to transition to audience questions in a second. What's the thing you're most scared of and the thing you're most hopeful about in your business?
Hopeful about every time something like Squid Game comes along.
Right.
Like, wow, I'll be honest with you, we did not see that coming in terms of its global popularity. So to me, it's like every time I look backwards at what did we predict in terms of how big something might be or how impactful something might be, even in our most audacious picking, we're underestimating where things can go and how big things can be and how impactful they can be in the culture. So that's super encouraging. That's super exciting. And I told you, I think the scared thing, I'm not that scared, but I think when I think about things I worry about is that kind of internal execution and how do we become a company that is around in 100 years and 200 years. And if we do that by creating a great business culture, by creating a place where people do the best work of their life, investing and trusting people.
And you still follow those rules that Reed and Patty had put out.
Yeah, and they evolve. I mean, the one thing we try not to do is to get these things to be so precious. People go, how do you preserve the culture? And I always tell people, don't try to preserve the culture. Try to evolve the culture to being better than it was last year. So so none of these things are in granite. So the idea that you can, challenge something that used to work 5 years ago at Netflix is really important part of the culture.
Okay, questions from the audience? Come up to these things. Come on up here.
Hi, thanks for the talk and for letting me borrow my friend's Netflix password all these years. Just have a question about big franchises. So have you thought about, building these multi-decade franchises the way, Disney has with Star Wars or Marvel? Or, will we see Tiger King spin-offs 50 years from now? Is that how you guys are going to work?
And that's how it starts in a way, but if you look at it, I mean, franchises are nice, but what you want is hits. Right, and I think when people look at this, some things get called franchises that are mostly just series of hits. And I think for us, I think of what is a big world-building franchises, something like Stranger Things, things that could spin off and support new cast and time jump and films and live experiences and consumer products and all those things. So Stranger Things is probably that, and you're seeing a franchise being born in its early stages, just going into its fourth season. But we did these live events that were wildly successful. If you go to the Universal Studios Hollywood Halloween haunts, it's all Stranger Things there too. So in general, I think that's the way to do it. And I don't know that you can only do it in franchises. I think for us, it's been liberating and challenging to tell original stories. So all those hits that I just showed you there on the film side, they're all original stories. And that's, I think, there's plenty of room for original stories if franchises are crowding out relatively few screens.
Although he wouldn't mind owning Marvel, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It's Mark Mahaney at Evercore. Ted, when people looked at kind of the sub-softness earlier in the year and they talked about a soft content slate, is there something you can do over the next couple of years to minimize the chances that at any one period of time, a quarter or a year, that you do have a soft content slate as the company gets bigger? Or have you got learnings that allow you to reduce that risk?
Well, fortunately...
That was a complaint from Wall Street that you were saying.
Yeah.
You had a soft whatever.
Yeah. I think it's fortunately COVID's a once in a century thing in terms of that level of shutdown. But in general, I'd say that people want to say, why don't you hold out your content and spread it out? A lot of people said that about during the shutdown. I said, well, because people are locked in their homes, let's give them as much content as they can watch right now. So we didn't change our release schedule. And that caused some things that were supposed to come out of the first half of the year to come out of the second half of this year. And then a few things from the second half of this year to early next year. And the way we do that, why it doesn't impact us as much is because we have so much, to your point. So some of these things are, we're 5 or 6 deep in terms of a week of new releases all the time in each of these content verticals. So it's not as felt. But the one thing that really caught us off guard in COVID, our first shutdown actually was a movie that we have coming out in a few weeks called The Harder They Fall, with Idris Elba, where we learned hard and fast about how to make these, getting back to production safely and all the safety protocols we put into place. But at the time we didn't think about dubbing. And we had the new season of Ozark that came out at the beginning of this lockdown. And we had difficulty getting the Brazilian and the Italian dubs made because at the time there were no dubbing protocols to record from home. So the unions and the actors and the governments were all shutting down. So we had to navigate all those things. So we learned a ton during this that will keep the impact of something like this from being prolonged again. And in general, the way you could do it is just plan as, basically you plan to 150%. But I think that would probably be a gross overreaction.
Okay, Ina?
Hey Ted, Ina Fried from Axios. I know in the past you guys have been pretty not into the idea of live sports. I'm curious if your thinking's evolved at all there.
I forgot.
I know Kara doesn't care about sports.
Oops, I forgot that one.
Look, I think there's a couple reasons that I've been fairly dismissive of doing live sports on Netflix. I think first and foremost, we bring a lot to on-demand television. And so scripted content and unscripted movies on your schedule is really attractive relative to watching a linear timetable or a showtime at the theater. That's hugely attractive. And being able to watch all at once and all those things are unique. We don't really bring any of that to sports. You want to watch all at the same time, and you don't, once you know who won, it's not that interesting anymore.
Right.
And it's really just not for us. And I do think that there's been plenty, the broadcast is built really beautifully for it. Cable's built beautifully for it. Other folks are playing with it now on demand, and I just don't know where that's heading. I feel like the next best use of about $10 billion is what I think would it cost to get into a major sport. If it is sports at someday, then we'll do it. But right now, I think the next best use of that would be more film and television and unscripted and games.
So no sports, sorry, Hina.
Sorry.
No sports ball
But sports
for you.
adjacent. If you really watch Drive to Survive, as we've really kind of blew up TF1, Formula One racing, and people really love it, and it's growing all over the world. The audience for Formula One racing because of this show. Even something as big as Michael Jordan, as big as the NBA, they cite the Last Dance as a huge growth in the sport.
Right.
So sports adjacent business is really exciting.
Sports adjacent. Got it, Amy?
Got that one? I just made up a word.
Okay, very nice. Well done. It's like erotic. Next.
Rick Cutter with Cloud for Utilities. First of all, great to be back in person.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Problem.
Congratulations on success with Netflix, certainly well deserved. And my question for you is, can we get another season of Queen's Gambit? What a great show.
Oh, wow, okay.
A softball,
All
Rick.
right, and then we'll
I would say
finish up
it's
with
a great one, but they've not contemplated another
To
one.
finish with that one. Okay,
No,
go
no,
ahead.
no.
Quick.
Hey,
Are you getting a season of Queen's Gambit? Answer them.
Oh no, it's a contained show. It's a limited series.
Yeah.
We do love it too.
No.
And more from Scott Frank, and I'm sure you'll
But
see
you're
a lot
getting
of,
another Bridgerton, and it looks very sexy.
and I'm sure you'll see a lot more of Anya.
All right,
when
right
on
here.
that show.
You've got only a limited time. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex Heath with The Verge. Curious to get your thoughts on the Apple Epic ruling and how you see that changing Netflix strategy for in-app payments on iOS potentially.
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's a pretty high-profile case between the two of them, and we'll just want to see how it continues to play out.
Big ramifications for you all potentially though, right?
Ramifications for anyone who does business on the platform, for sure. Yeah.
Ramifications. All right, last one, very quick.
Hey, thanks. First of all, thank God for Netflix during the COVID issue. I have a question. You talk about being customers first, and I'm not in the media business at all. My name is Karen, and I'm on the enterprise side of things.
Yeah.
But I recently read that Whip Media did a study where 70% of us are really tired and think there are way too many subscription services. And even if you're not cost sensitive, managing them back and forth and trying to remember where you saw something in that aggregation. With you and Disney clearly moving more into investing billions into production, how important is that aggregator role? And do you see a role for companies like Stroom who want to be the super aggregator and kind of have a class pass across not just the secondary and the tertiary folks coming in with content, but you guys as well?
It's a really great question. And I think if you look at cable television with 500 channels, and remember in the early days of
Nothing's
cable,
on.
57 channels and nothing's on. That's what people were expressing, the inability to find things, even though they knew they were there. They didn't know what channel they were on, what time they were on. And on-demand solves a lot of that, and personalized UI solves a lot of that. And that other part about managing a bunch of multiple subscriptions, just have Netflix. Just have one. That's all you need. It's one.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Customer first?
Okay, I'm gonna allow my son one more question. What are you gonna ask, Louis?
Hi, I'm a big fan of stand-up. I really like the Netflix specials you guys have, especially the Dave Chappelle ones. I was really happy to see the Chappelle show on Netflix, but then it was removed due to complications of compensation. So I was just wondering, going forward, what is Netflix's strategy in adopting and engaging with content that's produced by other studios, as well as content from before Netflix's time? And also, are you making sure that those creators of the content
You didn't
are...
plant this, did you, Karen?
No.
No, I was just over there inspired by this conversation. But I just want to make sure that people who I care about and enjoy, like Dave Chappelle and such,
Yeah.
are compensated and treated fairly by studios like yours.
I'll tell you a really quick
I'm a
story.
good parent.
You're a great parent, yeah. Louis, that's a great question. I'll tell you a
Great
quick
question.
You have time for a quick answer,
You
quick
cheap
story?
bastard.
No, here's the better. I'm gonna save my reputation.
Okay.
So I didn't do hardly any business travel in the last 15 months because it just was too dangerous and too risky early on. I did 2 trips, and one was to see Dave Chappelle in Ohio doing that show in a cornfield, and the other was to fly to Austin to talk to him because he wanted to have this conversation about the Chappelle show and that situation. He said, "Ted, here's the deal. I didn't get paid for that. these people are making a fortune on I can't make a new Chappelle show because they own my name and my face, and I just feel like they are dealing in stolen goods, and I think that you should take it down. And I said, well, and I remember I had no financial recovery here. We already paid for it, and I told them I would, and we came down, took it, and we announced that we would take it down, which then opened up a conversation for them to have a renegotiation, which was great, and it led to him resolving that problem. Very few deals are as bad as that deal was in the early days of someone's career, but we did what I felt was the right thing by Dave, and then the rest of the industry kind of followed, and that's what saved it. And I'm betting forward on our long-term relationship with Dave, not trying to arbitrage something from the past. But I would like to make that content available to people, and they should be under deals that are constructive. Next week we'll put all 180 episodes of Seinfeld on. It's been incredibly lucrative for all the talent on that show in every form of distribution, and Dave just didn't have a deal like that at the beginning of his career. So I'm like you, I'm a monster comedy fan. That's why I think we have pushed it in so hard. We've got a festival coming up in Los Angeles next year called Netflix is a Joke Festival. We're gonna have 100 shows in 5 days in every venue in town, and it's gonna be the who's who of stand-up comedy. It's gonna be really remarkable. But I'm glad you're enjoying the stand-up, and I think this is probably a very sustainable home for stand-up and for stand-up comics.
All right, that's great. How do Taylor Swift and Britney Spears? Anyway, thank you so much, Ted.
Thank you.
I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.